Hello everyone, welcome back. In the last video, so all those who have seen the last video, we have designed this simple temperature converter UI using Tailwind CSS. Now in today's video, we are going to make this work. Okay, so right now this doesn't work, this doesn't do anything, it doesn't convert or do anything. So we are going to make this work, but using three different strategies. First using Vanilla JavaScript, then using VueJS framework, and then finally using ReactJS. And then we will compare as to what are the pros and cons of each of these methods. Okay, so let's begin. So let's start with the first one. So let's open up the code. So this we have done it in the last session. So this is the code for the temperature converter app that is opened over here. Let me bring it side by side. Okay, so this is the app. Now we want to first start, we are going to first make it using Vanilla JavaScript. Okay, so first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create 3 copies of this. So now let me open JS, and now let us work on this. Okay, so I will close this and let's close everything up and let's run this on the live server. Perfect. And yeah, perfect. So now this is done. Now we want to add do this entire thing using first the vanilla JavaScript, right? So let's add a script tag at the bottom to add JavaScript. Okay, so let's first create a file. Let's say script.js. Okay, so let's call it script.js, and here I'm just going to include that script.js. Perfect. Okay, so now I have this. Now let's come over here and let's just console log so that we know that it's working. So let's say hello world. Okay, perfect. Now let's also open the console, and there you go. I have hello world over here. Okay, so now let's minimize this and let's work over here. Now when we do these things with pure JavaScript, we have to first do is select all the elements. Okay, so what I usually prefer is I find out which all are the places or which all are the elements which I want to target, and I first create variables to have a reference to that. Okay, so the way I do it is so for example, I want to click on these two buttons, right? So 2° Celsius and 2° Fahrenheit, right? Similarly, I want to click on plus minus these buttons. I want to get the data from this text box, and I also want to display the temperature, and also I want to change the symbol. So basically there are these many uh, elements that I want to target. So the first thing that I do is give unique IDs to each one of them. Okay, so let's do that first. So these are all my IDs. So once I have the IDs, now what I will do is I will come over here and define variables, and I will start making the variables one by one. So let's say I will start with this is equal to, okay, so that is it. So once you have this, now you can access now this way you have everything ready to go, right? Now the first thing that you want to do is manage how what will happen if you want to store the state of this particular button, right? So you want this button to be this page should store the state, right? So now as such you can do it in many ways, but for this particular case what I'm going to do is for this button I'm going to have, because it's a button, I will just have an input type hidden with the name, let's say convert to, and with the convert to, let's say C. Okay, so this is just to store whatever is the current value that is selected, right? And here I will also like to give an ID to this so that I can select it directly with the name also, but I would like to give it an ID so that it becomes easy. And now I can select that also over here. Perfect. So that is done. Now let's work on it. So now what should happen is I should have a click listener on this button, the button that is the Celsius one. So let's add that. So the first is btn underscore 2c dot add event listener, and the listener is the click function. Okay, so this is what I want. Now let me just quickly do a console.log just to verify whether it's working. So yeah, it's working. So you can see when I click on this, it prints to C. Perfect. Now what next? So whenever I click on this button, the value of this convert to must be set to dot value must be set to C, right? That is what I want. Simple, right? And so just to check, let's do a console.log and see if it has been set or not, right? And similarly, I will duplicate this code and the same code will work, only for this time it will be for F and this will be F, right? And I think that's it. So let's try it out. So if I click on this, it gives me C. If I click on this, it gives me F. Perfect. So now you can see I am getting this perfectly. That is cool. Now what next? So the next step is, so right now it is changing, no doubt, but the values are changing, but the animate that the selection is not happening, right? So even though if I select F, it is changing over here in the console, but the this part is not changing. Okay, the reason for that is we need to add a class to this particular thing, right? So let's see how to do that, right? So that is going to be very simple. We will just create a function. So now what the basic idea behind this is that we first store the state in this hidden value, that is this element, hidden input element, convert to. So we store the value, then we remove the active style, that is the background and the shadow and the bold, all those things from the the other button. So if the Celsius button is clicked, then the other button, from the other button I will remove the active, right? So remove classes, and then I have to add the active class, right? So add classes, right? So so I have to add an active class to this particular button, right? So let's see how to tackle that. So first let us make two functions, one to remove the class and one to add the class. Okay, so let's create a function, um, add, or let's first make it remove active classes. Okay, and let's be a little bit more descriptive from buttons, from btn. Okay, so and we will pass btn to this. Okay, so whichever btn we will pass, from there the particular uh, css class should be removed. Okay, now let's first go to our html and let's bring back that this was the active class, right? So we had uh, a blue background, then a border, then a shadow and bold font, right? So these are the classes. So to remove the active class, we should remove all these things from it, right? So we will just uncut this and we will put this over here. Okay, now obviously this is not going to work, but let's see what is the issue and then we will see how to tackle it. Okay, so this is the first thing that we will do. Then the second function is going to be somewhat the same, but this will be for adding active classes to button. Okay, and here also I'm going to do this, and instead of remove I will be doing add. Okay, so it will be add. So that will be adding these classes to this particular button. Cool. So these are the two things that I have, that the two functions that I've added. Now as far as this button is considered, so I should remove so it's already giving me a hint, but this is not the correct one. So I don't have to remove the active classes from this button, but rather this button. Okay, because if this is active, then this should not be active, right? So I will remove the class from here and I will add active class on this button. Okay, so this is what is going to happen. Then at the same time, I'm going to, so now I don't think these comments are required. I will remove these comments and I will copy this and paste it over here. Here the reverse will happen. Remove the class from C, that is the C button, and add active class to the Fahrenheit button, right? Simple. So this is what this is what is going to happen. Okay, so let's see if this works or if this gives an error. Obviously this should give an error, so let's add. So you see immediately that the remove function remove command doesn't work. The reason is you cannot you cannot remove multiple classes like this. It should be comma separated. Okay, so let me just quickly do that. So let me add this between each classes so that that can be managed, right? So this is how you give multiple classes at once. Okay, so now let's try it out again. So if I click over here, it moves on to this. So now you see it's working perfectly. So let's hide this, and if I click, it easily swaps. Okay, so this is perfect. It is working perfectly. Okay, now obviously the other part is still to be implemented, but at least this part is working. Okay, so now once this part is working, now after looking at it like this, I thought of an idea that there should be a little bit of transition so that this transition is a little bit smoother. So what you can do is you can have transition. So you can say transition, and you can say duration of, let's say, 500, and you can say ease in and out. Okay, so when you do this, now you will have a nice little animation, right? So now you can, there is a nice animation that is going on. So the same thing I will copy and paste on the other button also, so that the same animation is there in both the things, right? Now one thing immediately that you will notice is that um, by default nothing is active, right? So what I like to do is, because C it is already C which is active, so what you can do is you can have that class over here. So whatever is the class, so I can take this class from here and I will add it to our above button, right? And I will quickly remove this. Okay, and that's it. Okay, so now you see by default C is active, but if I go to F, then F becomes active, right? Perfect. So whenever I refresh the page, C is by default active. Cool. Now once this is done, now it's time for us to actually work on the other parts of the of our app, right? So the first thing that I am thinking of doing is giving a value to this particular. So let's start with 0, and immediately I see a problem with the styling, right? So two things I'm thinking is wrong with this design is, first of all, the text is not center aligned. So let's align that properly. So text center, perfect. And the font is, for me, it's too dark. Let's change the font. So text gray, let's select something a little, yeah, so this is better. Okay, cool. So now I have a value, right? So now I want these buttons to be activated, right? So when I click on these buttons, it should increment this value by 1. Okay, so let's see how to get that. So for that to work, we need to have few more listeners. So what are the listeners? So I have a minus button. So add event listener. So I have a button, the minus button. Whenever I click on the minus button, the value of the input temperature. Okay, so what is that temperature? That is input temperature value should be decremented by 1. Okay, so let's say it is equal to the current value. So I will do a parse int of whatever is the current value, and I will subtract 1 from it, right? So let's save it and let's check whether this works. Perfect, this works. Now the same thing has to be done for the plus symbol also. That is a plus button also. So I will just say plus, click function, input temperature, instead of minus, I will just say plus. And this also works. Perfect. Okay. Now once this happens, I need a way to calculate the temperature, right? So let's make a function to calculate. So calculate the temperature. So so that let's create a function for that. Function calculate temperature. Okay, so I just used GitHub Copilot, and the GitHub Copilot suggested this to be the code, but obviously I'm going to change this. So first of all, if the convert to value is equal to C, that means I want to convert to Celsius, right? So the formula for converting that is I can just say convert Fahrenheit to Celsius. Okay, and that should give me the formula. So GitHub Copilot is very good in that terms. So I got this now. Similarly, if I just want to verify whether the other formula is correct or not, I can just come down and let me just remove it and try it out. Yeah, perfect. So you can see I have got both the formulas. Very good. Now I just have to figure out the what we want to do next. Okay, so the convert to we are going to provide what do you say, we are going to get it from this field, right? So we don't want to give this, so we can skip this parameter. Then we want to calculate the temp. Now for calculating the temp, only thing required is the input temperature. Now input temperature we are getting from here, so we will take it directly and we will come over here and we will say temp is equal to parse int input temp dot value. Okay, so we don't have to pass this also. Cool. So now we have this, we get the temperature and we are returning this. Now there is a slight problem over here, is that this may result in a very big value because we are not rounding. So let's do a little bit of math. Round and uh, let's round it to 2 decimal places, right? Similarly over here also, math round to 2 decimal places, and this will be much better, right? So now whenever the input temperature changes, we just have to run this command and this will give you the updated temperature. That is the basic idea. Now this is one way of doing it. Okay, now the second now the thing is, after this calculation is done, you will have to update the temperature over here, right? This is one thing we have to keep in mind, that we have to update this temperature, right? Now this can be done here itself, or you can have another function which will do it. It is completely up to you. Okay, so let's set the converted temp equal to 0, right? And then we will just save this over here so that we don't have to render it. We don't have to return anything from this function. It just calculates it. Okay, so once this calculation is done, next step is to update this particular UI, right? Now how to do that? Now for that we have this particular div, that is calculate temp, if you remember. So this is the place where we have to update, right? So we have already selected that over here and we just have to update it, right? So we will just say calculated temp dot inner HTML is equal to converted temp. Perfect. So now whenever this function runs, it gets the value from the input temperature. It I yeah, so one more thing I have to check over here is, instead of converting it into int, I should convert it into float, so that if any floating point value is entered, that will also be converted appropriately. Okay, so then it is checked what is the current conversion, and based on that the conversion is done and it is updated over here. Okay, so let's check whether this works. Okay, now right now this is not going to work because we because these buttons, the plus and minus, they are only incrementing the value. It is not calculating this temp. Okay, so basically this calculate temp function is never getting called. Okay, so let's call this function. So whenever we change this input temp, we would immediately call this calculate temp. Okay, so let's do that. Let's call this at both the places and let's see. So we call this and there you go, it works, right? So it works. We can easily see that it is working now. And if I change it and if I come over here, it still works, right? Now there are few problems. The first problem is whether I select to degree Celsius or to degree Fahrenheit, this value doesn't change. Okay, so this is one thing we have to change. Okay, second thing, if I change this number directly, let's suppose 56, and if I press enter or do anything, nothing happens, right? So that is another thing we have to worry about, right? So this is very easy to handle. So let's see how to handle that. So for that, we have already selected this, right? So input temp, we will take that and we will say add event listener, and I will say on key up, it will calculate. Okay, it will calculate temp. Simple, right? So it should, if I say 5, it calculates immediately. And if it is blank, so this is where we have to handle this, right? So if it is blank, that is if this value, if this temp value is blank, so we will have another uh, uh, check to check whether if the temperature is blank, then what to do, right? So let's tackle that. If it is blank, okay, so if this is blank, then I will simply do this. Okay, else I will do, okay, cool. So if the input temp value is equal to an empty string, then I will do this. Perfect. So yeah, so if I remove this and I get this, and I should actually return, otherwise this will keep on running. That is the issue. So now you see I get a blank. Perfect. So now this is done. Now if I put some value, then it works. Perfect. So now everything is working, but still there is one issue. The issue is that if I try to change this button, okay, so this conversion factor, then this doesn't change. Okay, so let's create a function for this which will toggle this particular class, okay, or the text. So now that is going to be very easy. So we can have another function. Let's call it toggle unit. Okay, so toggle unit, and so if convert to dot value is equal to C, let's copy that from there. If it is equal to C, then the temp units is this, else temp units is this. Perfect. Okay, so now this has to be called, that is very important. So I will first of all call this immediately, so that as soon as this opens, this starts with this, and whenever I click on these buttons, okay, button C and button, so immediately after that this should be called, so that this is also reflected. So let's see whether it works. So if I select this, it goes to degree F Fahrenheit, and if I select this, it goes to degree Celsius. Perfect. So finally, this is, I think this is our final app. So let's close this. Let's maximize this. And here is our final app. So this is how you can create a simple temperature converter app with pure vanilla JavaScript. No frameworks involved. Okay, so let's quickly see. Now there is a small little issue that I see. Initially it is starting with this, so I don't want that, so let's remove this value and let's put it as dash. Cool. So now I think this is the final product. So if I enter, let's say 56, it is in Fahrenheit and it is converted to Celsius and it gives me 13 degrees Celsius. So 56 degree Fahrenheit is actually 13 degrees Celsius. So this finishes with the Vanilla JS temperature converter. Now the same app we are going to build again, but with VueJS framework. So let's begin. So let's first run the live server. So this is our temperature converter UI that we have over here. Let me just rescale it. Okay, cool. So now sorry, let me just open the view HTML. Okay, so this is the view HTML. So let me just quickly include the CDN for Vue.js. Okay, let's first open Vue.js. So this is the Vue.js site, and let's go to install. And when you go to install, um, I have option of with build tools. I can do it with npm and run a complete Vue.js dev environment using the CLI. But because this is such a simple application, I will be using a CDN method. Okay, so let's take this CDN. Then let's go to our editor and let's put it just above the closing body tag, and let's also add a script tag. So let's create a script for our view. Okay, so let's call it script view.js. Okay, this is where we are going to write the code. Let's come over here, include that script, and let's add script view.js. Perfect. And now here, let's come over here and let's take this code and mount it. Use this as the starting code and put it over here. That is cool. Now this particular example expects it to be mounted, this view app to be mounted to an element with an ID of app. Okay, so we don't have that right now. So let's go to our app and let's go to this particular outer div. You can put it anywhere, but I'm putting it over here. Let's give it an ID of app. Okay, so I gave it over here. It's better if you give it at a place where it is where all the elements are accessible, or whichever components you want to access, all those elements must be within that particular div. So this is fine. Okay, so this particular div is fine, so I have given it an ID. And now to test whether this is actually working or not, so there is a variable that is defined called message with the hello view command. So just to check whether everything is working, I will just do temperature converter, and here I will just say let's just say message. Okay, and if everything is working, it should give me the result. Okay, so where is the, okay, so I have not yet started, I guess. Yeah, here it is. So the here is my output, and you can see I have got the message hello view. That means my VueJS is working perfectly. Okay, so that's the installation of Vue with the help of CDN. Okay, right now I don't need this message, so we will remove that. Now let's look at how to handle the same application but with uh, Vue.js. Okay, now this is going to be very easy. So now first of all, we want few things that we want to store in this particular. Now because this is a very small app, we don't want to make multiple components of each of these elements. So this is going to be a single without any components or anything. So I'm just going to put multiple uh, values. So first of all, I need one value to store the current conversion. Okay, so whether it is to degree or to Fahrenheit. So I want to store that. Second, I want to store the temperature. What is the current value of the temperature? And third one is the output, final output, that is the converted temperature. Okay, so let's take some values. So convert to, so I will have this to C, that is the default, then temperature to 0, that is the input temperature, and converted temperature to also to 0, let's say, for example, right? So now converted temperature, I'm thinking of putting it as a computer property, but we will see a little later. Okay, so I have this now. Now we are ready to work with the application, right? So now the first things first is whenever I enter something on this particular input text, it should be mapped to this temp variable. Okay, now doing this is very easy in Vue. You just have to bind it. So let's come, that is the best part about Vue.js. So you just have to use vmodel and you just give the name of the model, that is temp, and that does it. Okay, so that will map it, and now that style is missing, so let's add that style. So text center and text gray, I think it was 500. Okay, so now whatever we do, it is getting mapped to that temp variable. So this is done. So our we have assigned a V model to the temp. So now whatever, so the Vue.js has a wonderful concept of two-way data binding. So once you assign a V model to any particular input element, then that is binded to that particular variable. Like for example, over here it is binded to temp. So this temp and this input element are now bound together. So if you change any one of them, the other one will be reflected automatically. So no, you don't have to write any code for that. So that's a good thing about Vue.js. Now this is done. Now what we want is a few more things. The first thing is that we want, let's first tackle with these plus and minus buttons. Okay, so we want to see how when we click on the minus or when we click on the plus button, the value of this element changes or increases or decreases, right? So that is going to be very easy. So I can come over here and I can say, I can come to the button, and on the button, that is the plus button, or the minus button, I can have at the rate, click, and I can say equal to, and here I can get the current value of the so here I can actually run any JavaScript code I want. Okay, but here I'm going to run I'm going to take the current value of the temp. So let's take that. So let's say temp is equal to the current value, that is temp minus 1. Okay, so let's see if this works. So if I click on this, it just works, right? Similarly, I will copy this, take this and paste it over here, and I will say plus. So this will increase the, so this is the beauty of Vue.js. You don't have to write all the code in the Vue.js script itself. So here I have not written any code till now except uh, these 3 lines, right? So that's a good thing. Next, I want to work on the logic of how to select the conversion factor, right? So now let's see how to do that. Now for that, again, we can have a click event listener. So the same event listener we will take. So at click, what I want to do is I just have to set this value, that is convert to let's say some value, right? So I will just say to C, right? So when I click on this, it becomes C, and when I click on this, it becomes, let's just copy this and paste it over here, and let's call it F. Okay, so when I click on this one, it becomes C, and when I click on this one, it becomes F. So that's it. That is what this is going to do. Now the second thing that I want to do is that this particular class that is there, this class should be the remaining part, so that is from here till here, this should be rendered only if it is the current value is C. Okay, so if it is C, then it should be coming over here, otherwise it should not, right? So how to tackle that? So to tackle that sort of a thing, what you can do is you can, if you want to have some sort of you want to run some class or a function, what you can do is you can have a you can bind this parameter using this colon. So this parameter will be now not a normal attribute, HTML attribute, but now here you can pass any JavaScript function that you are defined over here. So let's see. So let's define some methods. So I will add methods to, let's, okay, so this is giving me the conversion code. So let me just get it. Okay, so this the conversion method we will come a little later, but right now I will write another function for getting the class of this particular selection, right? So let's call it get class. Okay, so it is called get class, and I'm going to, so let's just for the time being, let's just return return this, right? So I'm simply returning this, nothing else. Okay. So now what this is going to do is now what I want is this particular element is going to be fixed. So this I'm going to pass, and along with this it should return me something other than that, right? So this is the existing class that I'm going to pass, and so basically this is going to receive some string. Okay, so let's say str, right? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add that str along with this, right? And then give it back to this particular class. Okay, now this I'm going to give only when it is if only when the string that is selected is going to be what do you say, the right one. Okay, so let's see how to tackle that. We will come to that. Just a second. So let's add a comma over there because it's an object. Okay, so now once we have this and we know how it's getting called, right? So what we have to do is we just have to call that function. So the name of the function is get class, right? So I will just say get class. Let me do undo. So get class and call that function with this string as the input, right? That's it. So now you see everything works as it is. Okay, so it is working as it is. Now the only thing is that if I copy this code from here, so I think, yeah, so I will just copy this code from here and paste it over here. And if I save it, you can see it messes up because this should be right instead of left. Okay, so now if you see, both of them are getting selected. Okay, both of them are becoming active. Why? Because whenever I call this function, if you see here, I'm not doing any checking whether which button is getting selected, right? So which button, so which whether this string is to be added or not, I'm not selecting that. Okay, so we want to do that, right? So I will pass the type of the button, right? And here what I do is if the type is equal to convert to. Okay, so sorry, I cannot access it directly. I have to do this dot convert to. So what I'm saying is, okay, so what I'm trying to do is if the type that I'm passing is equal to the the current value that is being stored. If it is equal to C, then that means I should return this, right? So I should be returning this. That is the current string plus the active string, right? Or if it's not equal, then it should not send the active string, only the whatever is passed, only that much should be sent, right? So if I save this, now if I come back over here, so I have to pass the second argument also. So the second argument is the type of the button. So the first one is type C and the second one is type F button. Okay, so now if I run this, you can see this is how it looks. So if I click on this, it goes to this. If I click on this, it goes to this. Perfect. Now once I have this function ready, now obviously that transitioning animation is lost. That is because I have removed that. So let's add that transition with a duration of 500, and let's ease in out. Okay, so this I will keep it for both. Cool. So now it should have an animation also. Good. Okay, so now we have this. Now we have this working. The only thing left is this, right? So whenever I update this, it should actually do the calculation. Now that is the only part that is left. Now for that, we have already returned this convert function. Actually, GitHub Copilot has written this. I have just pressed tab. So I will just use this. So basically what GitHub Copilot has given us is a function called convert, which is just checking what is the current conversion factor. Is it convert to C or convert to F? If it is convert to C, then this is the converted temperature. And if it is convert to F, then this is the converted temperature. So the only thing we have to do is either call this function, or uh, when we call this function, then this will be updated, right? So we could put that inside this. We can call this function whenever the button is getting clicked, or what we can do is, instead of doing it like this, we can do another wonderful thing in Vue is something called as computed property. Okay, so I will convert this into computed property, and I will copy this code from here and I will paste it over here. Okay, and I will return. Okay, that's it. So now I don't need this. Perfect. So that's it. So now instead of having this converted temperature, I will remove this, and now I will have a converted temperature, which is a computed property. So difference between computed property and data property is that this we are setting, and this is being computed based on the data property, right? So this will be always up to date based on the logic that is written over here, right? So now the only thing left is to use this over there. So let's come over here, and at this particular place we can just say like this and save. That's it. So that will give us computer property. Let's run this. Okay, so what's wrong? Yeah, so I'm taking this temp, I'm doing the calculation. Oh, I cannot store it over here. Instead, I just have to return it directly. Return. And similarly, I will return it over here. Okay, and I don't need this. Okay, that's it. And now obviously this is giving me an error because there is no rounding. So let's quickly do a round math dot round. 2, and similarly I will do math dot round 2. Perfect. Okay, so now if I add, everything works perfectly. Cool. So now I can just say any temperature and it will instantaneously give me the result. Cool. So now I can directly switch and I can say, yeah, perfect. So that is it. It was pretty easy to work with Vue. No problems at all. Okay. So this is our final app using VueJS. Pretty simple app without much efforts, very simple logic and a very small code base. Okay, so this was how we created a temperature converter app using Vue.js. Now the next part, the last part of this will be how to make the same app using React.js. So let's begin. So in the first session, we have copied the entire code of the UI into 3 separate files, one for basic JavaScript, one for Vue, and one for React. So this is the React file. So the only thing I have done is just renamed the document name as index-react.html, and also I have created an empty file for the JavaScript related to the React library. So now let's begin creating the app for using React. So let's first run this app and see what do we have currently. So currently this is what we have. So it is the same UI that we have created for our first 2 sessions. Let me just resize, and this is how it looks. So now the first job of this, right now nothing is functional. So the first job is to bring in React library into this. So let's open React.js. Let's go to get started. So let's open up the website. Let's go to get started, and over here, if we go to try React, and here if we go down, and we can go to the CDN links, and here we can get the CDN links for the React library. So let's copy that and paste it just above the closing body tag. So if you go to add React to a site, and here if you go over here, try React with JSX. So here you can see what you will need for adding JSX support to your website. So you will just need Babel. So let's take that and let's add that to our page. And once that is done, now we are ready to include our script file. So let's add that and add script react. Now there is one more thing. If you read the documentation properly, so if you read this particular line, you can use JSX in any script tag by adding. So this particular type field is very important. So let's add that. So whichever file is going to have JSX should have this. So if you don't put this, then there will be error. So let's save that. And now we are ready to write our code. Now, before we move to the JavaScript part, I would like to do one more thing. So here I have this div, which is actually my entire app. So I'm going to remove this div from here, and I'm going to take it inside the app, that is inside my React. But before that, let me just add a div, another div, and shift everything that was there inside this. The reason why I did this is because I want to give it an ID, and let's call it root or app or anything. Okay, so now the reason why I did this is so that I can mount this, I can give the path of this particular element as a mount point for my app. So let's go ahead and let's first check whether our app is working currently or not. So yeah, so it looks, let me just, yeah, here it is. So this is the app. So it is working. So nothing is still broken, everything is proper. So let's come over here and let's start working on our app. So to start working on our app, let's see what all things do we need. So let's go back to our main concepts and let's look at an hello world example. And this gives us a basic example of what our ReactJS app should have. So basically we should create a DOM root element and render any JSX that we want. So this is a JSX that we are rendering. So the reason why I gave root over here, if you remember, I have created an div with an ID of root, is because I am going to mount this React onto that div. And now whatever we put over here is going to be replaced over there. So let's just find out what exactly is the output. So let's go back and let's look at the output. So here you go. So now this shows that our React is working and it has replaced everything. And now this is the content that is being injected by React into the DOM. So now instead of this content, I want this content to be displayed. So let's remove this from here and put it inside our JSX. Okay, now you can do it in many ways, but I'm going to create an app component. So I'm going to render that over here. So to do that, I will create a class called app, which extends React component. It will have a constructor which I'm going to set a state which is going to be storing all the data related to the temperature converter. So right now I'm just going to just let us put something just to test, and that's it. So that will be my constructor. And then I will be needing a render method. So this render method will have a return statement, and this return statement is where I will be pasting my entire HTML that I've copied. Now, once this is done, I will be closing it, and that's it. So this is my entire app. Now, just copying and pasting the code will not work because what we copied is HTML and what we pasted is should be JSX. So there are few things that we need to do to convert this into JSX. The first thing is the class. So all the class should be converted to class name. That is the first thing that you should do. That is, we should call it class name. That is the first thing. Second thing is, if you look at any tag which doesn't have a closing tag, like for example, this input tag did not have any closing tag, so we should close it. That is the second thing. And third, there should not be any attribute with an hyphen. Like for example, if you look at any of the attributes, so for example, in the SVG, you can see there is stroke line gap. So I can make it camel case, and here again, so we can replace this quickly with camel case so that it doesn't result in any error. So once that is done, our HTML to JSX conversion will be complete. Okay, now it doesn't matter if there are hyphens in the class inside the CSS classes, so that doesn't matter. Only thing is the attributes should not have any hyphens. Okay, so that's it. Let's press save. Let's open console and let's just check whether there is any error. So there are no errors, so perfect. Okay, so now we are ready. So now in this case, we are not going to make any or multiple components. We are just going to use simple state variables to handle the entire app. So let's first create the variables required for the state. So I want to have convert to, that will be the variable used to save from which temperature to which temperature we want to convert. Then we want current temperature, which I will put it to 0, and I also want to have converted temp, which is the actual value of the converted temperature. Okay, so this is my state. Now once my state is ready, now what I want is, the first and foremost, I want my input to reflect the state. So how to handle that? So it's very simple. I will use value, and inside value I will just say this dot state dot and temp. So that should give me the temperature over here. Now obviously the styling is a little off, so let's set that. So first let us start with text center, then text gray 500, and that's it. Okay, so now let us just test whether it's actually working. Let's set it at 250. Perfect. So it is working. So now the value is coming from the state. That is good. But now if you open the console, you will see one error that is coming up. It says you provided a value prop to the form field without an on change handler. Okay, so what this means is that you are using a value, but you are not you have not handled the on change event on this particular element. So let's do that. So let's add a function uh, or on change event. On change, I'm going to run a function, and this function is going to be this dot handle temp change. This is the function. So when this function is called, what should happen? So let's write that function. So it gets E is the event that is triggered. So the only thing I'm going to do is update the state. Now the state, I should not call it directly or change it directly. I should always change the state with the help of set state. So in the set state, I'm going to only put the values which are going to be changed. So I want to change the temperature to the current value that I get from the input element, that is e dot target dot value. So this is the value that is entered on the text box. So this is how we get the value. So once we get that, we can close this, and now our handle temperature change is ready. Now once this is done, let's handle the button click events also. So let's handle that. So now whenever the buttons are clicked, that is the plus and minus buttons are clicked, the value of the state should be changed, or it should be incremented or decremented. So let's implement that function. So let's again say on click. This dot handle increment, so that is, or decrement, whatever. Decrement. So let's handle decrement. So whenever I do that along, so I can come over here and I can say handle decrement, and I will set the state, and I will reduce 1 from the current temperature. And similarly, I'm going to have handle increment, where this is going to be +1. So this, the same function will be used, only this will be increment. That's it. So this should increase the temperature, and this should decrease the temperature. Perfect. Okay, cool. So now once that is done, now I am handling handle decrement, handle increment. Now only thing left is to calculate this temperature. So to calculate that, we want to get this. So we can have a function which I can say calculate temperature, and I can say if the state convert to is C, then I will say set state, and the converted temperature is this. Else, if the other way, that is if you have to convert to Fahrenheit, then the formula is this. Simple. So it's nice. I did not write even a single code. Everything came from GitHub Copilot. Now this may not be perfect because I still need to round it. So let's do math.round. Okay, and that will give me my temperature. That will calculate my temperature. Now the thing is, it is calculating the temperature, but we have never executed this command anywhere. So let's do that now. So whenever the temperature changes, we should recalculate the converted temperature, right? So you can see wherever the temp value changes, after that immediately we should call this function. So we can call this function wherever this is getting changed. Good. So now this value, whenever it changes, it should also change. But problem is we are not yet showing the value. So let's finish that. Let's come over here. Sorry. Let's come to the JSX and let's come over here, and here is where we are going to display it. So we just have to say this dot state dot converted temperature. There you go. So we have the temperature over here, and if we increase this, we get the value. Perfect. So now the only thing left is to handle this switch. So right now it is not changing anything, so we have to handle that. So whenever we click on this button, the value of converted to C should change, right? So let's see how to tackle that. So now this is going to be very simple. Let's come over here on this button. I will say on click. I just have to do a simple set state. So I will just say this dot set state, and I can directly set a state because I know what I want to set. So I will directly say convert to, and I will just set it to C. And the same thing I will copy and I will bring it down, and I will say convert to F. Simple. So that's it. So now I can okay, something went wrong. Let's see. Okay, something I did wrong. Okay, so this should be an arrow function. Okay, so that was the issue, I suppose. Let me go to console. Okay, so there is no error as such. And let's see, everything is working. And if I convert it to Fahrenheit, then everything looks like it's working. Okay, now one more thing left is we are setting the state directly over here. Instead of doing this, we could create a few more functions which would handle the state. So I prefer doing it that way so that we have more control. And another thing that we can do if we do that is we can recalculate the value. So let's do that. So let's handle let's run handle, let's say, unit change. Let's call it unit change, and let's get the state. Let's set the convert value to whatever we pass, and the whatever value we pass, right? And this function is what we are going to run now. So let's go down, and instead of doing it like this, let's run this function. So this dot handle change, and I'm going to set a value to our button, which is going to be C. Similarly, let's take this entire thing and paste it over here, and the value of F. So now this should work, right? Now, before I go ahead and test it out, for this handle unit, I will also do a recalculation. Now, the reason why I'm doing, even though the temperature is not changing, I'm doing a recalculation because the temperature is dependent on the type of conversion. So if the conversion type changes, then definitely the temperature also changes, right? So it is a good idea to recalculate the temperature. So let's do that and let's find out. So let's say 5, and if I do this, it converts. So now it works perfectly. So now it is converting, but there are two more things left to do. First, the class, the selected class. So we are not able to understand which one is getting selected because the CSS styles are not getting changed. And second thing, this is not changing, right? So whether we select to Fahrenheit or to degrees Celsius, it is always degrees Celsius. So these two things we have to tackle. Rest everything is done. So let's handle that. So let's go down, and over here in this is the class that we have to handle. So in this we can take this out, take this entire thing from here, remove this, and instead of this class name, I will start a curly braces and template literals, and here I'm just going to paste my string. Now this string, I don't need to execute the entire string at once. So I just want to execute this when required, not always. So let me just save it and try it out. So you can see this works perfectly. Now the remaining part of the string should only execute if a specific condition is satisfied. So that condition, for checking that condition, I'm going to add template literals, and I'm going to check whether a particular variable is set or not, and based on that I will see if the result is there or not, right? So the value stored in this state dot convert to is this value. If it is equal to C, if it is equal to C, so if it is equal to C, then I can say this, or else this, right? So yeah, so that works, and I just have to add a little space in the beginning so that the first one doesn't get skipped, and there you go. So you have the class now. So the only thing I have left to do is copy this entire thing and paste it on the below one and save it. So now obviously the orientation at this left needs to be changed to right, and that's it. So we get the result. Now obviously this has to be F. So if this state is F, then the second one will be selected. If the state is C, then the first one is selected. Let's save it and let's see how does it look. Ooh, sorry, I put this in the wrong place, so this should be at this place. Yeah. Okay, so let's check that out. Now it's perfect. If I select this, it goes over here. Perfect. Okay, so the only thing left for us to tackle is this. So when we change this, it should also change this unit. Let's suppose if I say this, and inside this, if I paste this, and if I try to run this, you will see that you cannot print something directly or raw HTML directly onto the React page. So then how to print it? So let us take help of GitHub Copilot to find out how to do that. So insert raw HTML. So let's see if it can tell us. Yes. So it looks like we have to do something like this, right? So now obviously we don't want all these things. We just want this code over here. That's it. So now we just want this to be pasted over here. Let's see how does it look. Perfect. Now instead of div, we just want span, because we don't want a block level element, right? And there you go, you have C over there. Perfect. So now we have an element which we can render directly. So now here what we have to do is just render something based on some condition. That's it. So let's do that. So let's take this out from here and let's simply do a simple conditional check. This dot state dot convert to is equal to C. If it is equal to C, then I'm going to do this. This, else I'm going to do, I think it is, I'm not sure. We will see what is. Okay, so if I select, it looks correct. Let's just get the code for, let's ask GitHub Copilot what is the code for, let's say HTML entity for let's see, can it find out? No. So let's do a quick, and there you go. So I can replace this directly over here, and that's it. So that is my app. So now I can change it. Perfect. And I can change the temperature and immediately I get the result. So 67 to Fahrenheit is -14. Sorry, to Fahrenheit is. So that's our final app, hopefully. Yes, so let's have a final look at all the three apps. So we have the pure JavaScript app, we have the React app, and we have the VueJS app. So all the three apps, if I compare the three apps, if we compare the code of all the three apps, so let me just quickly open all the three apps and let me just maximize. Let me just split it. Okay, so the first one is, if we look at the first one, that is the JavaScript one. JavaScript one is the same code, took around 74 lines of code to finish the project. So obviously it was very verbose and we had to do a lot of functions. We had to write a lot of repetitive work. Now, if we go to the second one, that is VueJS, we did the same app with only 25 lines of code. That is pretty impressive. And the final one, the React one, it took me around 87 lines of code. Somehow it took more lines than even vanilla JavaScript. Maybe there are better solutions to this. This may not be the best place to use it because it's a very simple app, but still what I feel is Vue is definitely much better when we talk about apps which needs to be done quickly and easily. And looking at the code, I feel, it's just my personal opinion, that the code of VueJS is much more cleaner, and it can be clearly understood what exactly is happening. And the React code is also very good. It's not the JSX is a little confusing, that is no doubt. Adding HTML along with HTML kind of a syntax along with JavaScript is a little confusing task, but it's doable. Nothing that cannot be done. But I would personally prefer Vue over React in this particular scenario. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this video.